Hey everyone, this is Stephen St. John again with another episode of Hot Mic with SSJ, and I want to remind you that you could subscribe on YouTube, and you could also download the podcast wherever you enjoy your podcast. So be sure to subscribe and download, and we'll have a new episode, at least one new episode every week. Sometimes we'll have 2 episodes. I don't know, Ben. It depends on your schedule, so I'm here for you. But right now, I'm really excited because the first segment, I have my dad on, and he's going to be a recurring guest, maybe every month. We'll see. And then last week, I had Jake and Todd Lebo on the show discussing the Sopranos movie, The Many Saints of Newark. And so when I come up with this idea, I wanted to talk to people that have interesting stories and that have experienced things that the normal person normally wouldn't have experience in, or wouldn't have walked in their shoes. And so I find my next guest to be extremely interesting. And also, he's a dear friend of mine for many, many, many years. I hate to even think about it because then I feel really old. And so, but I'm talking about Craig Cummings, who was one of the best boxers ever to come out of this area, ever to come out of Kansas City, fought for a world title, and also is a Kansas City, Missouri firefighter. So there's plenty of things that I want to talk to Craig about. And also, way back in the day, he trained some fat kid that showed up at the gym one day. Me, and I'm still fat, but hey, for a while there I wasn't. But right now we have Craig Cummings with us. Craig, how you doing, man? It's good to see you.
Good, man. What an honor to be on this with you. We started when your radio show in the very beginning. I went with you, and you put your first demo tape together, and so now, man, what an honor to come start or help with the broadcast.
You know, it's
the podcast
full circle because when I was first starting at Union Broadcasting, my first gig, I was just I pitched this idea. Hey, I can do a weekly boxing segment because all the casinos are doing boxing, and I think the casinos might advertise. And I've trained with a lot of the fighters, and the guy that trains me is the best fighter around, and he'll come in and he'll help me get other fighters as guests. And you were the first guest when and we were interviewed by Chad Boger, who of course is the president of the company now, when he was still on the air. And that was one of my first in-studio interviews. So that would have been, I think, 98.
So proud of you, bro.
I'm proud of you, too. I'm proud of you said yes. I think, I hope he wants to come out here and talk to me. But, I mean, it's 98. Oh, wait, I got to do math now. 18, 20, 23 years ago. It's the first time I interviewed you. So, has anything happened since?
It's been a minute.
Right.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about, I want to talk about your background, okay? First, for people that aren't familiar with you and where you're from Gallatin, Missouri, right?
Gallatin, yeah.
And so take me back to a young Craig Cummings that decides, you know what, I want to be a boxer.
Well, I was 5, so I don't really remember. There was a boxing club in Gallatin, and I remember my dad came home one day and he was like, "We're gonna take my brother to the gym." And I'm like, I want to go. I want to do everything the big kids did.
And how old was your brother at that point?
He was 4 years older than me, so he was 9.
All right.
So we go to the gym, and I was stuck. I loved it. I mean, I was there from that point on, from the time I was 5 years old, every day. So I had my first fight when I was 6, and I was so active. And like when I was 10, I fought Kenny Gould, who ended up winning the bronze medal in the Olympics. We fought in the finals of the National Silver Mittens tournament. And so I was a runner-up national champ at 10, and one of the best little kid boxers in the country. So high school football comes along, and I play football, and then college. And by the time I got to college, I'd boxed my whole life. I'd already had 100 and some odd fights, and I didn't ever really look at being a pro boxer. But whenever that came, like Tommy Morrison started killing it, I'm like, well, I think I could probably, I've spent my life doing it anyway. Why not?
And boxing was hot around here, especially when Tommy started to hit the scene.
Well, whenever he turned pro, and he was getting the big fights on ESPN and USA Boxing and all those, and it made it look fun. So I decided to turn pro. My trainer, Mr. Nix, was tight with Peyton Shear, and so Peyton, my first pro fight, my pro debut was in Madison Square Garden. So I had 3 fights in Madison Square Garden, and then I ended up signing a contract with them to have televised. So it all took off, you know what I mean? And it was going great up until after I fought Aaron Davis. I had that car wreck and was off for a year and a half, and kind of had to regroup and start all over, and ended up getting back to a world title status. But boxing was always a secondary thing, I always had something else going on.
Right.
I always worked at a bank, or was a fireman. I mean, I've always had another job. So, that's the hype that comes with the boxing for me was more because my parents it made them proud, and the people that followed me, I wanted to make them, correct in their following. If they reinforce what they've been following this whole time. So like getting to fight for a world title to me, it meant more what it did to other people than it did for myself.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So you mentioned Mr. Nix. We'll get to him, but your father Tom was always in your corner.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so tell me how much background did he have with boxing? Because that's been very interesting to me. We've seen many successful fighters have their fathers in their corners. That's not a rare dynamic. But for you, tell me what that was like and what background he had in boxing before he started training his boys.
Well, he was a student. I mean, he studied everything. He read a lot. He boxed in an orphanage. He grew up in an orphanage in Waco, Texas. Had a really rough life, and he just thought boxing was something that every kid should do. I mean, he didn't really do it. It's not like he participated and had fights, but he was a student of the game, and he had been exposed to it at an early age. So whenever it came up, there's a boxing club in Gallatin. He's like, yeah, we're going. I mean, you guys need to do this. So, and then he just, learned from the best. I mean, he just paid attention. He studied. He read books. I mean, boxing is a lot of common sense, really. I mean, if you're on balance, you got good fundamentals. I mean, and fundamentals are simple. They're the same for everybody.
And what do you always tell me? If you can dance, you can box.
If you can dance, you can box. But
right?
if your feet ain't right, nothing's right.
Right.
I mean, you got to always be on balance, because if you're off balance, you're pretty much fucked.
How much did that help you to have your dad in your corner?
It was always a calming presence. I mean, there was nothing ever got too out of whack. Like, for instance, I'll give you a for instance.
Yeah.
When the Randy Carver stuff, whenever they were slamming me, and when Jason Whitlock called me Kid Fire Hydrant on the front page.
Yeah.
Well, the whole deal was I had already in negotiations to fight for the world title with Steve Collins. I mean, that was already a done deal.
In Scotland.
I mean, we'd already talked about it. So, this article comes out, and they'd offered me $25,000 to fight Randy Carver. The title fight was 3 times that. So at one point I called Dad. I'm like, dude, I'm depressed. My locker at work. I mean, those articles were everywhere. I couldn't go to the pisser without reading that article.
Right.
It was on the urinals. I mean, everybody, because that's what firemen do. So I called Dad, and I'm like, dude, I'm depressed. He goes, what? I'm your psychiatrist. What are you depressed about? So I was telling him, I'm like, I want to just do this fight, dude. I said, I just get this one over with. The title fight will come later. He goes, well, son, what I'm just wondering is what's wrong with your math?
Right. Right. You don't turn down a title fight for that much money.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, I was all for just, pleasing everybody. But he was like, well, what's wrong with your math? And that made a lot of sense.
And so you mentioned Mr. Nix, right? And so tell me about Mr. Nix, how you got hooked up with him and what he meant to you.
Well, when I was in college, I would only train because I had a Golden Glove scholarship. They paid for me to go to college, so I kind of felt obligated to.
And where did you go?
I went to Missouri Western.
There we go. Griffins, baby.
So while I was in college, I was going to college, not much school. I was having a really good time. And so whenever I would, fight, I would train just for the fight, train for the tournament, whatever. I mean, I wasn't a year-round fighter like I should have been.
Right.
So I went to Mr. Nix because, he was like the best guru around. Tommy Morrison had been there for a little bit when he first turned, because when Tommy first turned pro, he was with Peyton.
Right.
My original manager. So I just kind of followed what he did.
And where's Mr. Nix gym at?
At 37th and Woodland, KC Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
And which is now what I've come full circle back to is I have my gym at the Garrison Community Center. It's free for kids. Nobody has to pay anything. And, that's how I grew up in boxing. I never paid to go to a gym, so I don't expect people to now. You know what I mean?
My best Mr. Nix story is so when you were training me and trying to help me, and then I go there you told me, hey, and we had been training at a 24-hour gym down in the city market area, 24/7 fitness. And I mean, you'd meet me, and we'll get into the story a little bit deeper, but you'd meet me at 5 a.m. before you went into work, before I went into work, and you would just train me, try to teach me boxing because you knew I was going to show up and I wanted it more than anything.
Yes.
Right. But then it's at one point say you need to come to 37th to Woodland where I train, and you can get some sparring. You can see how things really go. And so I go in there and I worked the bags and did some stuff maybe for about half an hour or whatever. And Mr. Dix was just sitting there dressed like it was 30 degrees, but it was like 80 degrees. Just sitting in his chair, just looking out, saying nothing. And so you just go over and you go, Mr. Dix, what do you think? And he looks at me and goes, this motherfucker can't fight. and I'm like, well, here I am. And you laugh just like that. And that's about the most positivity I got from Mr. Nix. But guess what? He told you.
Yeah.
He told you the truth.
Oh, yeah.
There it was.
Yeah, he hurt feelings every day.
But it was kind of funny. And so you mentioned the fight in Scotland. Steve Collins was the WBO champion, and you go to Scotland to fight him, right? Tell me about that.
It was a pretty awesome experience. I won the WBC Continental Americas title over Carlos Bates, and it got me ranked in the top 10.
Carlos Psycho Bates.
Yeah, so that got me ranked in the top 10. So my dad gets this phone call from a foreigner, and could barely understand what he's saying, and he goes, "We want your son to fight for a world title." And
right.
How much would that cost? So my dad just shoots him a number, and the guy hung up. He's like, well, I guess I was a little too high. I don't know.
Do you remember like ballpark? Like what
well, I mean, my dad, exactly what he said. He goes, well, Steve Collins, he's about the meanest dog on the block. So we're going to have about 150,000 for that.
And so for people that don't, know the business, say for a main event fight in Kansas City, what would you get back in the day? What would be the average pay?
Well, I was very fortunate because I ended up doing a deal with the Ameristar, so I was like their house fighter, and
you were a good ticket seller.
So, very good ticket seller, yeah. So I mean, and that's what on the small market, these club shows, man, that's what it's so hard to do now is if you don't have local talent that the fans are coming to see, because boxing, if you're not a big name, the middle names they don't know. I mean, because there's more MMA on TV than there is boxing, and these guys aren't becoming household names that aren't the top. If you're not on pay-per-view, then they don't see them on ESPN every week or Friday night, Tuesday night fights, all that. So because it doesn't exist now.
Like when I fought at Beaumont Club, I got $400, and that money was spent before I stepped in the ring.
Well, there's a perfect example. My pro debut was in Madison Square Garden, and I fought a guy from Jerusalem, and I got $400. I mean, that was $100 a round. That was the pay back then.
That's right.
But once you get to 6, 8, 10, and depending, like Jake Paul said, a perfect example. You don't have to be good. You don't, whatever. If you're packing the house, you're going to get a piece of it.
Right.
I mean, and that's, boxing has become, I say it's always been that way. I mean, you look back, Jack Dempsey fighting a kangaroo and shit. I mean, they've always done weird shit. I mean, boxing has always had a bunch of weird stuff going on to promote it to, like my wife, she was having a fit this morning. She was listening to Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury's back and forth about religion, and Wilder is supposedly a devil worshiper, and Tyson's, Jesus guy. So
there's a lot there to unpack, by the way.
Oh my God. Yeah. Right. So, but people will go really, really far to sell a fight.
Right.
I mean, that's just the nature of the beast.
And to that point, Wilder has yet to beat him, but I would go see that fight every month if they wanted to have it.
Oh,
because
man.
it was wildly entertaining.
Yeah.
Pun intended. But so the point is $150,000. That was a big deal, eye opening, and he throws it out there.
Right.
And so, but they hang up. So then they call you back.
Well, yeah, we went back and forth with negotiations, and he called back, and I think it was 80, and we said yes, so we'll do it. And then they came back and they said, well, we have a guy that'll do it for 40. And I said, well, tell him good luck. I was done, going back and forth with it.
Steve Collins was the world champion. You're fighting him in his backyard.
Yes,
right?
But and I was, freshly ranked. I mean, I was new to these kind of big fight negotiations. So,
and out of that $80,000, there's a lot of expenses there too. It ain't like you're walking away with $80,000. I mean, you're talking about training expenses.
I ended up walking away with 60.
Yeah.
I mean, when it was all said and done. So
right. And so you go over there, and I mean, you put him down. It was a hell of a fight.
Well, it started out good, but another thing that I would have learned in retrospect, you learn so much more now,
right?
Because I didn't demand anything. I wasn't, I need a restaurant that's got, hard-boiled eggs and toast and whatever. The food was terrible in Scotland. I mean, my granddad immigrated here from Scotland, but, I wouldn't go back to eat the food.
Right.
So I lost like 6 pounds during the 2 weeks that we were there.
So you're there for 2 weeks before the fight. The food was terrible, and you're not.
And I'm nervous as shit.
Right.
I mean, don't want to eat anyway. So by the time the fight came, I was 161 with my clothes on. He was 183 on fight night. You know, we both weighed, 68 for the weigh-in.
Right.
But on fight night, I didn't gain anything, and he was 25 pounds heavier. So I had that going against me. I had the smallest ring I've ever fought in. You know, it was a phone booth. There was no getting away from this guy.
You can YouTube the fight, by the way.
Yeah.
Craig Cummings and Steve Collins.
The whole plan was move, box, jab, try to keep him off me a little bit. And as soon as I stepped in the ring, I'm like, well, that plan's out the window. There's nowhere to go. So I just planted my feet and started ripping. And anyway, knocked him down twice. I knocked him down. He knocked me down. I knocked him down again. So the first round started great. Actually, I always started great in the first round. Like Aaron Davis, I had him hurt in the first round. The only first round that I've lost was Michael Kessler. He beat me up from the beginning.
Another world champ.
But from the first bell, I knew at that point that I didn't really probably need to box anymore.
Right.
That I can't compete at this level.
And so you're a pro fighter, a very successful pro fighter, having a very successful career. When do you decide, okay, I'm going to become a firefighter?
Well, in 95 is when I got on the fire department. It was 2 years before I fought for the world title. I actually went to my interview down at the city, and I was like, yeah, boxing was something that I just done in the past. I'm ready to move on to a new adventure. And, my buddy Johnny Palma was, the only really fireman I knew, and he told me, I called him. I'm like, what do you do anyway? So I went over to his house. I put on all of his gear, and I'm like, hey, this is cool, man. Where do you sign up to do this?
So, is this something you had always wanted to do, or just
No,
all of a sudden, like, I want to be a firefighter?
Well, no, I used to, I get pulled over by the cops a lot. And they'd always, search me and fuck with me. And I was like, man, what could I do where I'm not a cop, but they will respect me? Fireman. Everybody likes a fireman. So that's when I called Johnny. I'm like, hey, man, what do you do? So that's really where my interest spawned from that. But what a perfect balance, the fire department is for being a professional athlete, because you get daily reminders of what life's all about. I've probably done CPR hundreds of times. I don't remember, but I remember the 25 we brought back. I had 200 fights. I don't remember 200 of the wins, but I remember those 25 ass whoopings I got. Right. It's just, everything's in perspective.
This might be a stupid question, but again, I want to ask questions that maybe people don't get a chance to ask all the time. So you've been a fighter to where you're fighting in another country against a world champion, getting ready to make that ring walk, which many people will never experience. You've also been a firefighter that's gotten the call, and you're getting ready to go and try to save someone's life, right? Can you compare the feelings? Is there
100%? Well, the being able to control your emotions, that's the most important thing in life, really, is being able to seize the moment, staying calm, getting the job done, and it's so gratifying at the end. But when you're going into the fight, going into a fire, you got to remain where you can think. And I see young firefighters now. You get that cat look in their eyes, like they're just hit the catnip, and they just tunnel vision. And I'm like, oh yeah. But you can't get that. If you're in a fire, you're in a fight, you got to think. I think on your feet, because everything's changing so drastically, so fast.
So one thing helped you with the other. So maybe going through that and going through that process of getting ready for a fight and controlling your emotions, that helped you when you became a fireman.
100%. I know it did. It's just, I don't know how to really explain it, but that is controlling your emotions and staying calm under pressure is about the best thing I could say.
So many of my friends that I've grown up with have become firemen, including you. And I got so much respect for you guys. And I have so many questions when I think about this, because we were both good friends with Larry Leggio and lost him. We've seen so many heroes that we've lost over the years. What is it like when you're getting ready to fight a fire?
I'm at Station 17.
Right.
And we had, in a 5-year period, we lost 5 guys off of our shift, which is ungodly amount of death. Because when you live with these guys, we're together for 24 hours every third day.
It's like a brotherhood.
Yeah, 100%. And 17s is even tighter than than most, just because of the history and everything that's went down. We had Mike Bowman didn't show up for work one morning. Pumper went to get him, and he was unresponsive. He was DOA. And then Billy Dady, another one of our dear friends, was painting a house, and his son works with us now, so that's pretty cool. But painting a house, had a heart attack, and then we had the Bruno and the cop deal where Bruno got shot, and then had Larry, and then Danny Rapp committed suicide in the parking lot. So I mean, it was a lot of shit happening at our station, and every year it seemed like something horrible was going down. So that puts everything in perspective for me. I mean, there's such, like I said, daily reminders that life is way more important than sports.
How do you handle that? You talked about what you've gone through as a firefighter, but you still have to do your job, and you can't think about that. You still, because people are depending on you. How do you do it?
I mean, it's what I do now. I mean, for 26 years that. I don't even want to. I can retire, but I don't even want to right now. I love my job. I love the guys I work with. I go to the men's club and hang out, and do good things for people. I mean, we're only there to help. Firemen, we're never there to arrest anybody, to fuck with anybody. We're just there to help. You need us, great. You don't, we'll see you later.
So if you've got, then hey, that's there's a handful of professions that little kids want to grow up to be. Like, right? And there's a lot of them. How many kids? I want to be a fireman. I want to ride on a fire truck. If there's a kid out there, or even a young man or someone considering that, what advice would you tell someone if they come up to you and say, you know what, I think I'd like to be a fireman?
I think it's a great profession. And well, I mean, I'm kind of trying to convince my son to be a paramedic, because right now medics are in such demand. And I mean, and that's what we need more than anything, because we've kind of switched over to a more medical focus in the fire department. I mean, it's always been, we're just firemen, but now when there's more medics, there's medics on the rigs, there's, the medical has become a lot more prevalent than the firefighting, because, back in the day, the old school firemen, they just, I'm fighting fire and that's it. But now, the medical side is where I would push people, and that's where I'm giving my son advice towards is, being a medic.
So, if you don't mind, I want to ask you: can you give me an example, or take me to a time where you were fighting a fire, and maybe the scariest moment that you've had personally, where you don't know, like you're it's going through your mind, like I don't know if I'm gonna get out of this.
Dude, I've been so hot, I thought I was gonna spontaneously combust. I mean, those little flip down visors, completely curled up, and I mean, I was at the fire when we lost Tibetan at the warehouse fire. I'd been on the job 4 years, so that from the beginning I've just been in a position to where we've been near the bad shit.
Right.
And, so I've been, like I said, so freaking hot that I didn't think, you could get any hotter without just bursting into flames.
But that's when the training kicks in. And like you said, that's just what you do.
Well, then you got to remember, how did I get in here? And, but you can't panic. I mean, that's.
And you've talked about, you've saved someone's life. What's that feel like?
That's pretty badass. But, so many times we'll get a pulse back, but we won't know, the final outcome. But in our eyes, that was a win. I mean, when we showed up, they were pulseless, and now they got one. Now they're breathing and have a heartbeat on their own. That's awesome.
Have you ever had the opportunity where someone has come back to you or tried to seek you out because you saved them or because you've helped them? And if you had that moment?
Well, we had a pretty kick-ass thing at the Fox 4 at the news station. Kathy Quinn, my good friend, was there, and there was a guy that was cooking. It was a Chiefs party, and he went down, and I mean, he was out. We shocked him 5 times, and brought him back. And she called me like 2 months later, and goes, "Hey, that guy's here." I'm like, "Well, let me talk to that dude." I mean, that was neat. So that was one of the rare times that we actually got to talk to somebody that was dead when we met him. You know what I mean?
I can't imagine that. It'd be like unbelievably gratifying, like you said.
That's pretty cool.
Okay, so I've got I'm gonna fumble around here with my phone because I got on your Facebook page, Craig, and tried to get a couple of pictures here that we could talk about. And there was one in particular that I needed to ask you about. And so what was your nickname when you fought? Kid Fire, right?
Well, before that,
right,
the douchebag name was the Battling Banker.
Yeah, the Battling Banker was, hey, he could kick your ass, but also get you a pretty good interest rate in the loan. And so I found this. I don't know. This is a promotional picture, but I sure like it. And I can even put it on camera right here.
Oh,
And you
awesome.
take a look at this. And so this says a couple of things to me right here. This says this could be okay. You're a boxer. Okay. You're a firefighter, but also there's a tremendous male stripper vibe to this picture. I think you would agree, right? Tell me about this photo shoot here, because a picture does say 1,000 words, and there's a lot of words to this.
I'm not sure where that came from.
Yeah, yep. I mean, you have that
I'm
intimidating
in it.
look.
Oh, yeah.
You got it all. There's fire around you, everything.
Yeah, that had to be 25 years ago because I still have my hazmat shield.
Right.
So I was in hazmat for a year. So that was clearly 25 years ago.
To be honest, when you walk into your house, is this up on
No,
the man above
it
the
is
fireplace?
not.
No. Did you have any? Has it been a while since you've seen that one?
It has.
That's
I don't have that.
Right.
You know
Ben,
what?
Yeah, Ben likes it. He's got a big smile. on his
It's
face.
actually on the wall at Firehouse Subs in Liberty.
Oh, is it? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, Firehouse Subs? You going there?
Well, no,
Wow.
my buddy Ross.
Yeah,
Ross
sure.
he owned them in the beginning.
Okay.
And so I made him a mannequin with full gear on it and put that picture. I mean, he hung all this stuff up, and the current owner, the guy he sold it to, it still has it up.
Right.
As far as I know. I mean, it's been a while, but yeah, that was originally to Ross.
Yeah. Hey, that ain't going nowhere. That's staying on the wall. And so now let's get back to when you're fighting and you find that the schedule of a fireman works with being a professional boxer.
It
right?
can't. I've always been like Station 17 and 18, two of the busiest houses in the city. So I should have went up north, should have went to the airport, should have went somewhere where I could just sat on my nuts, but I didn't. I mean, because that's not what I signed up for. But like the night that before I fought Bates, I went ahead and worked. I thought I could just work a 24-hour shift, no big deal, and fight the next day. Well, we had a house fire over northeast, and there was green shit coming out of this out of the roof, and I was on the roof, and I didn't have a pack on, and I mean, I inhaled so much smoke that night, it was horrible, and I went ahead and fought. And then thank God, he went down, and Ross called it, and I made it back to my corner, and that was as far as I made it. I mean, we both went to the hospital after the fight because mine was because of the smoke inhalation and from fighting the fire the night before. So, I pushed it a little too far.
What's it like when you're walking to the ring? Because that's to me, that's like watching the fight the other night between Fury and Wilder. I love many sports, right? But I challenge anyone to give me a more exciting moment for a big title fight when they're making the ring walk, right? And all the talk is done. And it's so exciting. What's it like for those of us that have not had that experience to be walking to the ring, thousands of people screaming, and here in a minute it's just going to be you and that other guy in the ring?
Well, there's a lot of weird emotions going on. You need your favorite song going. I mean, because if you
Tom Sawyer. Because for a while there, it was Tom Sawyer.
Well, because we were fighting on the river.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it kind of matched the theme.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I did weird shit. I would get my outfits ready. I would like sew stuff onto them or glue stuff onto them. I mean, kind of my ritual before war was preparing my outfits, and
right.
It's like my ring song kind of matched the environment. The river deal, Tom Sawyer. So I mean, that's I love Rush anyways.
You were into the theatrics, and that's part of being an entertainer.
A part of it.
Right.
I mean, it's the little subtle things that stand out. You know what I mean? And that's the fighters nowadays that there's. Jake Paul's a perfect example. It's how you sell it. It's how you present it. I mean, and do people want to see you fight or not?
I remember going to train, and you had me coming out to 37th and Woodland to train at Casey Mo Parks and Rec. And I remember one time I was sparring, and I was getting ready to fight in the Golden Gloves, and I was sparring with our friend Damon Reed and then Greg Suttington, right? and Damon, boy, he and I remember we're getting into it, and he's like, I love this shit. I'm like, oh God.
He really does.
Right. And so then he hit me so fucking hard with a body shot that I legitimately thought, okay, I'm going to shit myself here in front of everyone. Let me get let me get through this round so I can go shit, so I don't do it in front of all the other fighters, right? And I've tried to convey that to like my sons, like what it's like to be hit. So I ask you, because you've been hit by some unbelievable fighters, right? What's the worst you've ever been hurt when you were hit, like in a fight in front of, and you ain't quitting, you're not getting out of there, but you're like, oh,
it was I can tell you, it was Kessler, Michael Kessler. He was hitting me so hard. I mean, never in 200 fights before that had ever quitting or, getting out of the fight ever crossed my mind. With Aaron Davis, I'm just thinking, I'm going to catch him again at some point, and the fight just went on. It never crossed my mind, get out of this fight. So we're about the third round of the Kessler fight, and he's hitting me with this jab that I can't get away from. I mean, it's hitting me right there every time, right underneath my nose, upper lip. So, it's swelled up. But I start thinking about the car wreck that I had, the fusion in my neck. And none of that had ever crossed my mind before. I'm like, fuck, if I keep getting hit like this, I'm not going to be able to play catch with my son. I mean, this is going to affect how I live. And that's the first rational thought I've ever had during a fight.
Right.
Actually I'm thinking sensibly right now during a fight. That's weird.
And that's when it's probably over, when you're thinking about other things.
You don't have that fighter mentality when you're thinking, fuck, I might actually be hurt this time.
And how old were you when you had the car wreck?
That was in 92. I was like 25 or...
I mean, how it's a minor miracle that you came out of that and had the career that you had, right? I mean, that was bad.
Yeah, it was a bad idea for him to... I mean, everybody said I should never fight anymore, but they took a bone out of my hip and fused C6 and C7.
Shit.
But Dr. Reinches was an awesome dude
right.
in North Kansas City. I mean, anybody needs neuro work done, he's the man.
But you're thinking about that in one of your last fights against Kessler, and that had never come across your mind in a fight?
Never crossed my mind. And I'm like, fuck, man. I mean, maybe I can't do this anymore. Maybe I will get hurt because that's how hard he hit. But, I was at 168 and, I fought everywhere from 147 to 175. Wherever the money was right, I'd go. So really, I should have been fighting 160 at that point, but, it's whatever. It is what it is.
Okay, so I really want to ask you about this because you talked about training young fighters, and we'll get to that. But, and for people that don't know background of the story, man, I was in a bad place in my life. My dad was away in jail. My uncle had just passed away after a long battle with ALS. My mom wasn't doing well, and it was I was battling severe depression. And so my mom, knowing that how much I love boxing, brought an ad in the paper to me. Said they're doing boxing classes at a gym down by the city market, and a professional boxer is teaching the classes. You need to go do this. Like, I'm not gonna fucking go do this. I mean, I'm gonna go in there, gonna laugh at me, look at me, it's ridiculous. And she goes, that's all you've ever talked about. You just at least want to try to box. You want to be around it. You want to be involved in this. She said, go do it. And she read me the right eye. She said, get out of the fucking bed, go down there and do this. So I show up, and I was super nervous. I'm thinking I'm gonna be here for 15 minutes and I'm gone. And you were so fucking cool about it. And I think you've told me you saw something in me where you knew that I wanted this really, really bad. I just didn't know how to go about it. And you worked with me. I was in the boxing class, and then you said, hey, if you want some extra work, meet me at 5 a.m., but you better be here. And you worked me to the point where I fought in the gloves. I had one pro fight. And I've always wanted to ask you, like, what made you want to help me? Because there's a lot of people that fucking wouldn't have looked at me twice, but you invested your time in me and really didn't ask anything in return except for my effort.
I grew up with my dad. I mean, my dad did the exact same thing. I mean, my dad was so cool. You talk about treating everybody the same. I mean, it didn't matter.
He was such a great guy.
I mean, you could be the king of your country or what. I mean, just a pauper on the street. He's going to treat you the same. It was awesome. And when you grow up gyms are melting pots, man. I mean, you got all ethnicities, all kinds of body types. I mean, just boxing gyms are literally a melting pot. And I grew up in that. So, I mean, I ain't judging nobody. I mean, everybody you can become a fighter. I mean, if you're short, you just have to have a little different style than a long rangey guy. I mean, you have a Mike Tyson style where you got a lot of head movement. You got to jab your way in. You got to get close. Or if you're long and rangy, then you got to stay on the outside. I mean, you got to just adapt to how God made you. But everybody can do it. I mean, that's one thing about boxing is anybody can do it.
No matter how much you weigh, there's a weight class for you.
Yeah, everybody fits.
And so there's a couple of stories before we run out of time I want to tell. So we have the monthly fights down at the Beaumont Club, and a lot of the guys that you would help train or whatever from the gym would fight there. And so that's where I had my first pro fight. Before then, I would just go to the fights. Damon would fight there. We'd walk out to the ring with Damon. That was cool as shit. I loved it. And so then one time, George Clark, remember? See, he was fighting, and the guy that he was supposed to fight didn't show up. Okay, and so Randy Cook, the promoter, then knew that I had been training, and he trained, and so and they knew that you wouldn't let me, or that you would. So you were off somewhere, so they come up to me, and goes, hey, we need someone to fill in. And then George calls, hey, I'll go easy on you. Come in there and he had a bunch of fights. He was a pro fighter. And so, I'm in the ready because, man, this is your chance. You finally get. I'm like, this is my, and I fucking eating nachos and like this is my chance. I get in the ring right now. And so then I run over and I said, hey, they want me to fight. He goes, he said, like, what the fuck is wrong with you? No, fuck no. And then you go over and you kind of got mad. You go, leave him alone. He's not fucking fighting. He's not ready for that. And so then some guy they pulled out of the crowd, he goes in there and George just beat the shit out of him. And he came out, his nose was broken. And you walk over to me and you go, is that what you want? And I said, no, I do not. And I said, thanks, Craig. But I'll never forget. It was funnier and shit. But that happened so much. Guys would get pulled back, especially back then.
Oh, yeah.
The guy would show up. And
well, you didn't have to have medicals. You could get them right off the street. I mean.
Right. And they did sometimes.
Yeah.
And then the other, so you got to fill me in on this one. So there was a time at 37th and Woodland, there was a guy that I can't remember that was talking shit about you, right? Whenever you weren't around. And so on this night, he was going to be there and you were going to be there. And Damon was there, like everyone was there. And you had fucking had it. And you were fucking going to get in there and beat his ass. I can't remember who it was. And so we were all there. And even Damon was like, oh, this is going to be great. You know how Damon, goes, oh, man, he's going to kick his fucking ass, man. And so you get in there and you light this guy up. And I don't think I had seen you beat someone that bad in an actual fight. Right. And that was, I don't know if you remember that story, but those were some.
Well, you know what? Funny, like, that still continues to this day.
Right.
That same guy.
Oh, is that? Oh, so you know?
Well, no, I know exactly who you're talking about because I remember I beat him in the Golden Gloves.
Okay.
And he was telling everybody that he got robbed and he could whoop my ass.
There you go. There it is.
I was like, no. So I beat him up so bad that day. I would almost knock him out, but then let him get his shit together, and then I would blast him. I mean, I was just toying with him like a cat. So this guy works for the city now.
Oh boy!
And he still tells people for the water department, still tells people that he beat me back in the day, that he got robbed. I mean, I hear it all the time. This guy at the water department still talking shit about you. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, I beat him unmercifully in the gym that day.
I kept looking at Dave and I go, is he gonna keep going? And yeah, I'll never forget. And that really gave me. We're laughing about a different perspective. Like, don't talk shit on anyone.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Be who you are. Go in here, work hard. Don't be talking shit. Don't bark up the wrong tree.
Well, I mean,
it was like what you remembered. You could have got him out of there, but you didn't. And you just kept it going and going.
I remember.
And so that didn't fix his wagon, huh?
I guess not. No, I mean, he's had a relapse because literally 2 months ago, the guy at the water department's talking shit about you.
Hey, I don't know. Hey, maybe we put this on the other card of the next Jake Paul pay-per-view. Something.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so now tell me, you talked about how you trained me and you helped change my life. I'll be forever indebted to you because it did change my life. It gave me confidence and it helped me. I don't know if I'd be in radio if it wasn't for boxing, some of the lessons I learned with you in the gym. But now you're giving back, like you said, like Mr. Nix did, and you're training kids, you're training young fighters, you're doing these things. And you won't tell the story, but I'll talk about it. You've gone so far as, I mean, you put food in some of these kids' refrigerators that don't have food to eat. You go above and beyond just a coach. You're a mentor, and you help kids that need it. Now I'm just curious what that's like for you, and why you decided to become a coach. I'm sure that doing it in honor of your father, but you really touch a lot of lives. And tell us now about what you do for these kids in your gym and your program.
Well, we got it going to the Garrison Community Center. It's right up the street from my house. I mean, 4 blocks away, so I don't have any excuses for not being there. But Damon and I had accumulated all this equipment. I mean, 40 years of boxing. I had 4 boxing rings, dozens of heavy bags. I had all this shit. So I just went to the center one day, and, it was kind of dead. There wasn't much going on. And I'm like, hey, how'd you guys like to have a boxing program? I'll bring the ring, the bag, the gloves, and run it for free. And they like, oh, that sounds great. But by the time we got with the city and, the run around there, it was like they were stalling me. Like they couldn't figure out why I was wanting to do that. And I honestly don't know. I think, God kind of sent me in this direction, and, it's just something I grew up in. So it only seems natural, that I would have a gym where people could come. I mean, it's just how it's always been in boxing for me. So we ended up going through the Golden Gloves. So the Golden Gloves gets with the city attorneys, and we get all the contracts and everything hashed out through them. So I have all my equipment with the Golden Gloves doing the deal with the city, so that the insurance is all covered, that nobody has to pay anything. And we're Monday through Thursday, 5 to 7. Free to anybody that wants to show up. We're competitive. We go travel around to these fights, and we try to have a good team in the Golden Gloves tournament every year. And
if somebody wants to come down, a kid just wants to learn self-defense or help his confidence level, you don't have to think about, I want to be a fighter. You can just go down there and train. And
of course, yeah, I prefer, like, I've got this whole new group, and out of 10 of them, 2 of them might want to fight. So it's hard for me to show enough interest in the other 8, to keep them coming. Because those 2 that want to fight, they got my attention. I mean,
right.
They're going to get mitts. I'm going to focus on them more than I am the other 8 that are just there to have fun.
Right.
So I need more coach. I mean, Paul Harness is amazing. He's there, Monday through Thursday every night with me, volunteering. But the more coaches, the better, because I think we're losing some of those kids that aren't getting the attention, that haven't decided yet why they're there. They don't know why they're there. Maybe the parents told them to go, whatever, but they haven't figured out, what boxing's all about yet, and the confidence it can give them, and, the general conditioning, because it's going to make you a better athlete. I mean, your hand-eye coordination, your balance. I mean, you're going to be a better shot in basketball if you can hit a speed bag. Promise.
And it's going to give you more confidence just in life in general. I know, like, my son Richie wants to come down there and volunteer. We keep talking about that. I'm going to fucking come down there because I can show, like, hey, I used to get hit with every fucking punch. Don't do anything that I did. And I was the other good thing is one time I was sparring and you're in there and I just started bleeding right away. And you thought my nose was broke. And you looked at me and go, oh, no, you're just a bleeder. Go ahead. Because I mean, a guy would look at me and I start, something would open up.
Yeah.
But man, how about the water guy? Can he come down there to the fucking gym?
Oh, God.
Take care of him. Hey,
yeah.
Hey, fuck you. Stop saying that shit. But the point is,
I think I've made my point a couple times.
You know what? hey, Fury had to make his point 3 times with Wilder, so maybe that's what we're looking at
I
here.
guess so.
Hey, man, just to wrap things up, you're a firefighter, you're a trainer now, and more importantly than anything, you're a father, right? And you've referenced your son a couple of times. And so was that at all a difficult decision when he decided, like, how did that happen? Like, okay, he's going to box. I want to box. Were you totally cool with that?
What's so kick-ass is he has enough respect for boxing. And maybe I've always painted it in a light of, it's no joke. I mean, if you're going to box, you got to fully commit to it because it will change your appearance.
And anyone that gets in the ring, it takes a tremendous amount of guts.
So I never had pushed him to compete. But we've always, done hand meds. We've always sparred. He went to the gym with me. So he's a badass. I mean, he can really fight. But he doesn't have the interest to pursue it as a career. I mean, he doesn't have the passion for it. He's not really a fan of it, per se. But he's really good at it, and he wants to do it. And he was going to have a fight here recently. He goes, Dad, he goes, I was thinking about it. He goes, and the only reasons I could think of to do it was the wrong reasons. It's like, to be popular on Instagram, to get more hits or whatever. I mean, right. More of a social media reason for doing it. And I thought, man, that's fucking badass. He got enough respect for the sport to know, he's not doing it because he loves it. He's doing it for attention. And he's like, I'm not going to do it.
Isn't it cool when we find out that our kids are smarter than us?
Oh, God.
Like,
yeah, well, it's awesome.
Yeah, right. I love it. Like I said, the bar wasn't very high for me, but guess what? They surpassed it quickly. And again, man, I just want to tell you, I can't tell you how much I think of you and thank you for helping me when I needed and being there for me as a trainer when a lot of people wouldn't give me the time of day. And I'm just so happy for you and your family and you. I mean, you're a hero. You're a firefighter and you're just fucking you've done a lot for a lot of people in this town that people don't know about it. And I have an unbelievable amount of respect for you. And I'm so glad that you're on the podcast so more people can know more about you, because I think that we could do 10 hours of this. We didn't even talk about Wilder Fury, the hell of a fight. So, Craig, thank you for being on Hot Mic with SSJ. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, man.
And I'm going to tell you what, water department, get your shit right. That's all I'm going to tell you. and hey, if you want to subscribe on YouTube or download the podcast, wherever you download your podcast, we'll have a new episode every week. This has been Hot Mic with SSJ. The microphone is off.